US dollar. And from there, when you had to go to double that amount, that $500, it took us 22 years. Right now, if you look at since then, we are doubling our per capita income between 5 to 10 years. So what initially took us 22 years to double, we are doing it within 5 to 10 years. This is point number one. Point number two, let's try to do also a back of the envelope calculation. Let's assume if India, my sense is that India is more likely to grow by 7% CAGR. So if you look at a 7% CAGR, and if you look at a population growth which is pretty much close to 1.1%, so going forward it could be 1% also. So you are talking about per capita real GDP growth of about 6% per year, pretty close to 6% per year. Obviously, if you grow by 6% per year, that means you will double the amount within this 5, depending on how the cycle is. 5 to 10 years is the period, closer to 10 than 5, within which you can double. So from that sense, if you are at 2,500, so obviously within the next 20 years will definitely be that's the time frame he's looking at. Will be upper middle class by that time. So my calculation suggests using his own methodology, and if we put the mathematics the way India is behaving right now, we should achieve a higher middle income status by latest by 2040.
Okay, that is actually puts the clock back even further. He was talking about India becoming a lower middle income economy by 2047. Mitali, if I were to bring this back to you, before that, Kartik, what is your thoughts at this stage on how there are 2-3 different back of the envelope calculations going around? Clearly, Mr. Raghuram Rajan's comments can be taken, as gospel of truth, as to that's the only reality. There's so many more factors going into even how you do a back of the envelope calculation.
So, Krishna, I think he's taken that safe territory of 6% growth rate, right? Okay. There are going to be years that we will achieve a higher than 6% growth rate, and that is something that we have already seen. Hopefully, in this financial year, we will be growing faster than 6%, right. Perhaps a 7% like the RBI has projected. There should come a time in the next 23-24 years where for a sustained period of time we are able to hit double-digit growth as well. Okay. Now, look at it in the context of China +1, the growing distrust on China, right. And hopefully some manufacturing, including some very critical manufacturing of semiconductors, moving to India. Will India get that manufacturing advantage and go faster for a few years? India should. But it's can we in 20 years, you're right, but can we in the next 20 years, 25 years, rule out a few more, at least a couple of more black swan events like we've seen, either a global meltdown which has a direct impact on India, or perhaps, another COVID-like, pandemic-like situation where growth across the world stumbles. So an average of 6% growth, I think, in the given sort of foreseeable, understandable geopolitical arena seems like a safe, yet I would say a very normalized, very a natural growth rate, not overly positive, nor negative. Okay. So I think 6% seems like a good number to go with.
All right, and with that 6% number, Sujan says that we will still end up being an upper middle income economy by 2047. It's just that you've used the same percentage figures, but your outcomes are different, isn't it, Sujan?
So I think, Sujan, are you looking at inflation numbers, a little more optimistically? Is your calculation suggesting that inflation may not be discounted at, let's say, 6%, 7%, and India's inflation is going to be perhaps, lower single digits, 2%, 1%, like the developed world, and hence the impact on growth is going to be far more pronounced when it comes to per capita income?
I'm telling the calculation is simple. I'm not taking inflation, I'm taking a real growth rate. So if you put the real growth rate closer to 7%, and population growth of 1.1%. That means per capita real growth will be about 5.9%. So closer to 6%. Even if you conservatively take 6.5% GDP growth from this point onwards, and population growth of 1.1%, then also you are talking about a 5.4% per capita income growth. Remember, between 2001 to 2015, China's US dollar GDP was growing at 16.6%. India's US dollar GDP was growing at 9.9%. So even if we don't say what China did during that period. We just do what India did in that period. Then 9.9% dollar GDP growth. And again, struck at that time, the population growth would have been 1.3%. So in dollar terms, our per capita income was growing 9.9% minus 1.3, which is about 8.6% kind of a growth. So there is no reason why we can't do that going forward also. Right. And in that case, as I said, we will be a higher middle income country by 2040.
Today, she is the only smiling leader in Rajasthan. All eyes will be on her moves if the BJP returns to power.
Vasundhara Raje Scindia defied all the odds to become the first woman chief minister of Rajasthan.
She has the uncanny ability of striking rapport with all sections. That's why she is very popular in her constituency, not only in her constituency but in entire Rajasthan.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web. Top military intelligence experts break down the web of deception. Colonel Hani Bakshi explains the phenomena of honey trap.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who's making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person.
Colonel Pavitran Rajan decodes the psyche of the victim and the predator.
But when you go up the chain, no one enforces it to people at the top. That disciplinary regime and the security regime is not enforced at the top. And they usually have a public profile where it is much more easier to approach that person.
A News9 special on how modern technology has added teeth to the ancient spying tactic.
Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Mitali, would you concur with that? Clearly, he is not concurring with Mr. Raghuram Rajan and his hypothesis of where India's income levels are going to be, and he's, predating it, saying that we will become an upper middle income economy by 2040. Your take?
So thanks a lot. So I haven't looked at either of those, calculations. So I won't say which one makes sense or not. But at this point, of course, the 2040 numbers make sense to me on your show. But of course, I would have to study them in order to take an expert, point. But I want to just change this conversation away from these numbers. whatever numbers we have, whether we achieve by 2040, 2042, 2045, who do we want to be as a country? What kind of middle income country do we want to be? Do we want to be a country where, we have the benefits of growth that are widespread? Or do we want to see the kind of income inequality that we are, currently seeing? And I think this is going to be the crux of where we end up and how soon we achieve middle income status. Because if we focus on growth decentralization, if we focus on climate resilience, if we focus on bringing women into the labor force, if we focus on, broad basing our growth, rather than saying, okay, let's just grow these 2-3, urban agglomerations that are growing very fast, that is when we will get even faster growth. I'm saying that if we bring in policies to, ignite growth in our tier 3, tier 4 cities, if we invest in the infrastructure development of our cities and, make them newer and newer engines of growth, which are climate resilient, then we can even achieve, nothing stops us from achieving even an 8%, 8.5% or 9% growth, so that we can even accelerate the process. So it depends on what kind of policy choices we make and what kind of path we take as a country. And, that's what we are always trying to advise the government to say, let's take a more inclusive path, and they are always open to that. They are always open to taking, more and more inclusive growth-oriented decisions.
All right, that was Mitali Nikore. Mitali, fantastic point over there. Growth is all fine, but what kind of growth is what we need to define, even as we want to grow with those numbers. Sujan, I'm going to come to you for a last quick take. Tell us from your perspective, there's talk of demographic dividend. We already seem to be losing that demographic advantage, especially in the southern states, where the population birth rates are lower than the population growth is degrowing, to be specific. In that sense, how much of a problem will this be that one part of the country has population growing as if nothing stopped it, and one part of the country which has population that's not growing?
It's always possible that kind of divergent trend will continue. But if we talk of India as a whole, at least for the next 15 to 20 years, we are going to have the demographic dividend. One point I want to specifically mention, that when we talk about dollar GDP, what we don't realize that we are not doing it in terms of the purchasing power of the money which it can buy. At India's currently the PPP multiple is 3.5. So if you are talking about our $2,500, the purchasing power of this $2,500 is in actual PPP dollar terms, that is 3.5 times larger. And that in itself, see, today a $4,000 country is a that's the upper limit of the lower middle income. So if you just use the multiple of PPP, we are already upper middle income country by per capita income right now.
Okay, we're already an upper middle income country is the word coming from Sujan Hajra. Sujan and Mitali, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on the News9 Plus Show. Hope to keep having you here again and again. Our second lead story tonight, and that is about how COVID-19 is on its way back. At least India has recorded over 1,800 cases already, and it's a new variant, ladies and gentlemen, called JN.1. Said to be a sub-variant of the famous Omicron, which had emerged earlier. This JN.1 is said to be extremely immune elusive, which means that it is extremely difficult to detect and very, very lethal and dangerous. We have my colleague Deepak Badana now joining us in the studio for more on that. Deepak, talk to us another COVID-19 variant that is making its way back to the world.
Thank you for having me here, sir. To begin with, this is yet another variant that's come in, and as we've seen with all the variants that have come in over the past couple of years, this has again defied the measures that have been taken to detect it. As of now, I believe there are 5 fatalities already in Kerala, and I believe there are some cases in Karnataka as well. And according to the Ministry of Health, as on Sunday, it was, I believe, around 1,800, the caseload, daily caseload, and it's slowly but steadily nearing 2,000. one can only wonder what is going to happen in the next few days.
And it's again China at the focus of it all. It's again emerging all the way from China. We have Dr. Vivek Nangia, Principal Director and Head Institute of Respiratory Critical Care Medicine, Max Hospital, now joining us on the show. We also have Dr. Sunila Garg, Member, Lancet Commission on COVID-19 and Professor of Excellence, Chair, Program Advisory Committee at NIHFM, also with us. Doctors, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. I'm going to begin by asking Dr. Vivek Nangia, quickly tell us how dangerous is the JN.1 variant of COVID?
So this JN1 variant that we are experiencing these days is an absolutely new variant. This is a subvariant of Omicron, which I think we suffered in 2022, January, February, March, those months. Since then, it was lying dormant, and now this subvariant has come up. Again, whenever a new virus comes up, we don't have the immune system working against it, and we become prone to illnesses because of this new variant. In some people, in fact, in most people, it is turning out to be mild illness only. But let's not forget that when you have an immunocompromising state, or in the group which is highly vulnerable, like those above 65 years of age, those who have underlying diabetes, cardiac disease, and cancers and other immunocompromising states, in them even a mild illness can turn out to be a serious one and can be life-threatening. So definitely, while we were always aware that COVID-19 is there in our ecology and will keep coming back, and this is what has happened, we are now dealing with a JN1 variant, which is a new variant to which our immune system has never been exposed. Okay. So we need to be very, very careful with this variant too.
Right, stay with us, sir. We need to be very, very careful. We'll come and ask you all that needs to be done to make sure that we don't contract this JN.1 variant. Dr. Sunila Garg, my only question at this stage is how, in terms of its ability to spread and how lethal it can be, talk to us. How big a danger are we facing with the JN. variant at this particular stage?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I just wanted to say that, when COVID, made its emergence in the very first point, I like to say that COVID was here to stay. And only thing is, when virus is here to stay, we have to remember that virus will undergo mutations. And this is one of the mutations of, when we say BA.2.86. And, this is, as of compared to the earlier mutations, this is the mutant which has got to be monitored very carefully, because it is, quite capable of, evading our immune responses as well. So I think we need to be vigilant, because we detected it as one of the mutations under surveillance, by INSACOG. So this is where we need to be, quite cautious, because as was pointed out earlier also, that people who are immunocompromised and or elderly, they need to be more vigilant. And as it is, we always say that, we need to follow more of preventive strategies as of mass cultures and all that. We need to be always keeping that in point. So, as this mutation is, supposed to be, as of now, it shows that, it is capable of infecting large number of cases. So that's where, and our borders are very porous. So we need to be very vigilant.
We need to be extremely vigilant is the word coming in from Dr. Sunila Garg. Stay with us. Dr. Nangia, you were telling us, how do we guard ourselves against, what is the best way? Is it or is it time to ring the alarm bells across, health facilities in the country and, state health organizations across the country to ensure that we contain the spread of JN.1 within India?
Yeah, absolutely. I think time has come. We need to go back to our COVID-19 etiquettes and COVID-19 behavior. I think it reminds me of that jingle where, which we used to hear so very often on the FM, on any station of FM, in fact, that do gaz duri, mask hai zaruri. So I think we need to go back and remember all those times when the entire country was devastated with the COVID-19 virus. So we need to prevent that, prevent ourselves from reaching that stage once all over again. So first of all, maintaining safe distance, hand hygiene, using mask, avoiding going to all these overcrowded places. This is also the time where Christmas is coming. There will be a lot of festivities around, marriages happening, malls will be crowded. So you need to avoid all those things. Apart from that, vaccination is something that I would strongly recommend, that you should go in for COVID-19 vaccine. Also, at this time of the year, the influenza is also very common. So there's no harm in taking the flu shots also, especially by the vulnerable group. So these are all the precautions possibly that you can take, especially people who are traveling from abroad. They need to be especially careful, because they are the ones who are more likely to get the virus with them. One more thing that I'd like to highlight here, that if anybody has a cold and cough, the first thing they should do is isolate themselves from the rest of the family. By this, they are not only protecting themselves, but also protecting the others from catching the same infection. This is more of a social responsibility, I feel, that we should all carry out if any one of us was to develop a cold and a cough.
Right. Dr. Nangia, the only question I have to ask is that at Max Life hospitals, have you already been preparing, knowing the fact that the situation is only going to keep, the number of cases are only going to keep increasing? Are you already preparing, with terms of oxygen cylinders or beds?
So as far as oxygen is concerned, we have our own plant now, so that is not a problem at all. As far as beds is concerned, we do not have any earmarked beds yet because we haven't really experienced any patient yet. But I think the day the patients start pouring in, we'll have all the processes in place. That is not a problem. We have our own ICU, which could be dedicated to respiratory patients and COVID-19 patients especially. And also isolation practices and everything is in place. There is no issue at all.
Dr. Sunila Garg, tell us in terms of what needs to be done at the state government level and the central government level. You have Kerala's health minister saying that it is not a cause of concern when the maximum number of cases have been detected in Kerala. So tell us in terms of government action, what needs to be done when it comes to combating JN.1?
You see, basically one thing which I'll say from the perspective of the governments, that we need to be vigilant, but and we need to be watchful of the situation, and we need to see the type of cases which are coming. At the same time, the message for the public is basically, if possible, for the elderlies and all, the masks should be, in place, and then, we should avoid going to overcrowded places. But as of now, what I will say from the perspective of the government and from the perspective of state governments also, and it was never, said no, that time and again for pandemic preparedness, it is important to do mock drills to see that the system is prepared and we are responsive, so that we do not have a kind of a knee-jerk reaction. So we have got to be vigilant. And the type of cases which are coming, also they need to be watched in, with regard to the severity and the age group, what they're affecting. So overall, we need to be kind of, watching the situation, and our, system, where we monitor the number of cases, we have to be very, very careful, and we need to see that though the cases were there in Kerala, but we also got the cases in Tamil Nadu, also in Karnataka as well. And apart from this, there are 40 countries in the world which already have got cases. So we have got porous borders, and pandemic, was never ruled out again. So we need to be always, be prepared for the preparedness, and then we need to be watchful of the situation.
Okay, you need to be watchful of the situation. Dr. Nangia, quick take from you before we wrap this up. Tell us, in terms of going forward, how does one deal with JN.1? And more importantly, how does one, there's so many, this December seems to be the situation every single time. December, the season, the weather, the cold, it always seems to be giving rise to newer and newer variants. And the BA.2.86, if we're talking about the Omicron subvariant, apparently has 20 different mutations possible. So are we looking at a situation there'll be more variants apart from JN.1 as well coming out?
And I think one factor you missed out was air pollution. That is another factor which is contributing to the flourishing of all these viruses and all these kind of illnesses. But yes, you can never be sure. These viruses keep mutating, and they mutate all the time. Even a minor difference in the genetic makeup can result into a new strain that may emerge. So we have to be prepared for it. We have to continue following all the precautions. I guess all those precautions need to be a way of our lives now. They need to become the norms that we need to follow, and not get surprised when something of this sort comes, or not be caught off guard when something of this sort happens. Okay. So I guess mentally we need to be tuned that this is a virus which is going to exist in our society, exist with us. It has entered our ecology and will keep mutating and keep harming us from time to time.
Okay, it will keep harming us from time to time. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that. Dr. Vivek Nangia and Dr. Sunila Garg, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on the News9 Plus Show.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The warship killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, that US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
He thought he could outlast us. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room.
Who will blink first? So far from preventing the expansion of NATO, Russian actions have actually resulted in the expansion of NATO.
It's a mess for Russia and it's a mess for the Western world, for NATO and the United States.
Putin is a dictator, and if he loses, that means the end of his regime, and probably of him personally. So he has to keep going.
Year 2, no end in sight. Streaming now.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The warship killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
In October 2023, Pakistan announced a policy that it will expel all illegal immigrants from its soil. And what did it mean by that? 90% of the illegal immigrants in Pakistan are Afghanis. Although 4 million Afghanis live in Pakistan, half of them, nearly 2 million of them, are said to be undocumented. So the question raised on, why did Pakistan announce this policy? Pakistan has reported an increase in cross-border attacks by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. What is behind those attacks? As Pakistan says, the presence of illegal immigrants has led to rising crime and terror attacks in the country. Is that the real reason? To talk about that, we have Mr. Yashovardhan Azad, former Special Director, Intelligence Bureau, joining us on the News9 Plus Show. And we also have my colleague Justin Thomas joining us here in the studio. Justin, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Before we get to Mr. Yashovardhan Azad, quickly, let's put this into perspective for all those watching this broadcast. There has been rising reports of rising violence in the Pakistan-Afghanistan border areas. And of course, all of this is the backdrop of that policy to deport all illegal immigrants in Pakistan, isn't it?
That's right. So Pakistan is the primary reason that they're giving is obviously rise of terrorism in their country and they're blaming the undocumented refugees for that. But remember, Pakistan has a dual terror policy where there are good terrorists and there are bad terrorists. So now probably the good terrorists have also turned bad for them. So it's actually their own policy which they have faltered, how they've used it, and now it's like turning back on them. The second reason that which is happening, they're claiming, is that they have very meager resources, and they're claiming that these undocumented refugees have a claim over that, or they have to serve it. But then again, your own economic policies have been paralyzed by one-upmanship between the civilian and the army out there. So that leads to nobody is there to actually look after the economy. So right now you are in a situation where you're not able to control the terrorism or have an economy backing up yourself, and now you are squarely blaming the refugees, which really is not the focal point here.
Right, clearly they can't be the ones to be faulted with for all the other follies of Pakistan. Mr. Yashowardhan Azad, before I even begin talking about this, I have to, before talking about the main topic that you're here for, I have to ask you one question, and that is on top of mind of everybody watching news tonight, and that is what is happening with Dawood Ibrahim in Pakistan. We're keeping it with Pakistan. I want your thoughts on it. So many reports emerging, no confirmed official reports, but what we are hearing so far is that he could be having food poisoning. What are your thoughts?
Well, 2 or 3 things about Dawood Ibrahim. The problem in Pakistan today is that Pakistan cannot say whether he was poisoned, or they can say whether he was not poisoned, because then they'll have to admit that he's in Pakistan. And they have always been saying that we don't know where Dawood is. So many times the letter rogatory which has gone, and we have asked for Dawood Ibrahim because he's a designated terrorist, not only by India, but also US in 2003. And remember that 25 million bounty was put on his arrest. So Pakistan is caught in a quandary. The other report says that 2 days back he did go to a hospital in Karachi. He stays in Clifton. And by the way, I have seen that his residence, because when I had gone with the cricket team, our cricket team in 2004, we're just passing before the stadium. On the left side, I saw his bungalow, and the cop who was in front of me, when I asked him, is this the place? And he smiled and looked ahead. So he's very well ensconced there, and the rumors are again rife. But time and again there are rumors about Dawood Ibrahim getting killed, Dawood Ibrahim getting hospitalized, and I think this is another of those rumors.
Okay, another one of those rumors. So let's not take all the Dawood Ibrahim reportage on social media all that seriously as yet. Yes. Is the word coming in from Mr. Yashowardhan Azad. Let's get back to what we were discussing. Tell us what is happening with Pakistan. You have about 4 million Afghanis living in Pakistan. 1.7 million to 2 million of them are supposed to be undocumented. Rise in violence in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. How do you view Pakistan's own claim that it is doing it because of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is leading to the rise in violence within Pakistan?
Pakistan has got a very feeble excuse that it is because it's moving the immigrants out of Pakistan. Because mind you, Tehreek-e-Taliban has come up with a avowed aim of establishing a more pure form of Islamic regime in Pakistan. And right from the Peshawar incident in 2014 to way down, there are so many incidents by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. So obviously this is not really the... But what has happened is that there has been a reorganization in this TTP, and after Mahsood is leading it, they've got all the people from that tribal belt. So because it's become a very strong, cohesive unit. I mean, all the Talibans have sort of coalesced under this, and therefore the attack on that day was audacious. And this shows their strength for the simple reason the explosive used were to the amount of 100 kgs, and it just blasted through and led to about 23 deaths. The issue is not really of removing the migrants. The TTP has its grudges throughout all these period, and has been attacking Pakistan at various where it has hit the most in that area which is their headquarters. The other day you remember they had attacked a security convoy. So that shows their ability, and Taliban has never made a statement or anything of this kind about the movement of the migrants or etc. That line is very vulnerable. That line is being contested. Afghanistan is not happy at all for various reasons, and you and I know the kind of things, what happened at the installation of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
Exactly.
So now, yes, there is no cooperation, and this is going on in full swing.
Right, and in fact, Afghanistan is saying all of this is caused by the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. So why did you have to touch the Afghanis in the first place? It's not like they've hadn't had their hands full since the Taliban takeover in 2021. Mr. Yashovardhan Azad, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. But you don't have to leave the story at that. You can watch News9 Plus documentary, our documentary on the same subject, and many more on the News9 Plus app. Make sure you download it from the App Store or the Play Store. But for now, thank you so much for watching. This is Krishnakumar signing off.
पाकिस्तान में बदअमनी फैलाने में एक बड़ा किरदार गैर कानूनी तारीक वतन का है। इसलिए रियासत पाकिस्तान ने इन अफराद को 1 नवंबर से वापस अपने ममालिक में भेजने का फैसला किया।
They are doing this out of desperation. In fact, far from it, they're going to swell the ranks of the TTP. It is a self-destructive policy which I don't think they know what they're doing, or they know what they're doing and they're doing it still as a sort of stopgap measure.
We'll create this problem for you. This problem is going to create unrest in Afghanistan. Your government will be destabilized. So either you give in to what we want, otherwise we will take these kind of actions against you. That's what's happening.
Easily the largest displacement of the 21st century.
Pakistan now claims policy came after efforts to exert pressure on Kabul in order to rein in the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. More than 1.7 million Afghan refugees are now facing expulsion. Their lives have been thrown off balance owing to Pakistan's expulsion policy announced on October 3rd, which imposed October 31 as the deadline for all illegal refugees and migrants to leave Pakistan. Citing security concerns, the acting Prime Minister of Pakistan, Anwar Kakkar, said that TTP attacks have risen by 60% since the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan.
पाकिस्तान में बदअमनी फैलाने में एक बड़ा किरदार गैर कानूनी तारीक वतन का है। इसलिए रियासत पाकिस्तान ने इन अफराद को 1 नवंबर से वापस अपने ममालिक में भेजने का फैसला किया। पाकिस्तान में एक बड़ी तादाद में गैर मुल्की अफराद गैर कानूनी तौर पर मुकीम हैं, जिनमें अक्सरियत अफगान शहरियों की है। दहशतगर्दी और मुजरमाना सरगर्मियों में मुलव्वस अक्सर अफराद का ताल्लुक इन्हीं गैर कानूनी तारीक वतन से है। इसके बावजूद हुकूमत पाकिस्तान ने अब तक इन गैर कानूनी तौर पर मुकीम गैर मुल्कियों की रज़ाकाराना वतन वापसी को तरजीह दी।
I think the Pakistanis have taken this decision as a kind of a pressure point against the Afghans. The fact is that they have been demanding that the Taliban regime in Afghanistan starts taking action against the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan fellows who are in, or who the Pakistanis allege have been given sanctuary inside Afghanistan. The Taliban do not, or at least are not taking action against them. The Taliban tell the Pakistanis that, look, this is your problem, you need to sort it out. To expel these people will create a lot of problems for us inside Afghanistan. We can facilitate discussions between you and them, but any discussion or any political compromise is by definition a compromise. So you need to talk to these people. The Pakistanis are not agreed to that.
They're deporting, 2-3 million people almost, which is going to unsettle Afghanistan. But where does instability in Afghanistan lead to? It's all blowback back into Pakistan. They're also doing it because they thought the entire, Haqqani network was their a pet dog and they'll do exactly what the Pakistanis wanted like they did in the 90s. And the Haqqani network has proven quite the opposite, that they're not willing to do what the Pakistanis want. Quite the opposite. They're actually using the same excuse saying, boss, we're a third world country, we can't control where our fighters attack, to justify cross-border attacks in Pakistan.
So this reaction of expelling these unregistered Afghan refugees in large numbers is, I think, a response born out of policy frustration and policy failure, because it is not going to make the situation better. If anything, it will make the situation and the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan even worse.
As of now, around 6 lakh Afghans have made their way into Pakistan since the Taliban's return to Afghanistan. Many face destitution, lack of work, and difficulty in sending their children to schools. The situation may become even worse after their deportations.
I think I don't know of any other place in the world where refugees have been treated in this shabby a manner by any country. Look, either they don't care, or they think that the Pakistanis are entitled to do whatever they want to do because they are the favorite child of the West.
I think this is going to significantly exacerbate. It isn't, the Pakistanis think they're reducing the burden on themselves. They're actually very significantly increasing the burden, because even local Pashtuns who see this being done to their kith and kin, how do you think they're going to react to all of this?
The Pakistani police and the Pakistani military is extorting money from these people. They put them in concentration camps. They call them holding centers. And I think what is happening is a very blatant violation of basic human rights of people, and the world is silent.
These deportations have ripped apart families amid allegations of mistreatment. Moreover, there have been reports of undue limitations on the number of personal belongings refugees may carry, coupled with an exorbitant $830 exit fee levied on the forced departure. Afghan refugees who had fled the country to escape war and terrorism have become pawns in a cruel political tussle between Pakistan's government and the extremist Taliban. The security crisis that Pakistan is facing today is a result of its own doublespeak on terror, fighting some outfits while supporting others. What it is doing now is scapegoating tens of thousands of poor Afghan refugees for the failures of its own policies.
You know, what is seldom recognized is that Pakistan played an enormously positive role in giving refuge to very large number of Afghan refugees. And this has been for a period of some 30-35 years, at least 3 million refugees being hosted by Pakistan in its own territory when its own resources are so limited. But instead of getting any kind of positive outcome from this very generous policy, in fact, it has had negative consequences. And that is largely the kind of negative approach which Pakistan has had to Afghanistan. So what should have been a winner for them has in fact turned out to be a loser. And this expulsion of large numbers of refugees is going to have a very negative consequence.
It's quite, cruel, because you are sending back the refugees at a time when winter is coming. We all know that the Taliban don't have the capacity for accommodating these refugees. So where will they go? There are also food shortages and other problems in Afghanistan. You know, if there was an action to be taken against TTP, then the Pakistanis should have thought of it before they said that, the Taliban are freedom fighters, like one of their former defense ministers, Khwaja Asif, has said. They should have thought earlier when their former Prime Minister Imran Khan said that the Taliban have broken the chains of slavery. They should have thought this through. Even at that point of time, people in Pakistan itself who have studied this issue had been telling the Pakistani authorities that look, the Taliban and the TTP are part and parcel of the same group. It's the same ideology, the same people, it's two sides of the same coin.
Yet, there is no global condemnation or hue and cry about it in the international media.
Easily the largest displacement of the 21st century, because when was the last time in this century you've seen 2-3 million people being forcibly shifted out?
There is no Washington Post or New York Times which will come out, carrying out campaigns against them.
You see, it's very simple. When a Muslim kills a Muslim, the Muslim world isn't concerned about it. It's only when somebody else kills a Muslim that they're concerned about it.
The Pakistanis can kill, they can murder, they can maim, they can create refugees, they can carry out illegal operations in other countries. There will be no Trudeau who will talk about Karima Baloch. There is no VDEM or all these Swedish virtue signaling guys who will talk about the death of democracy.
With all this gear, you must be wondering if I'm climbing a mountain. Well, let me give you a wider look of this place. This is Asia's largest mountain of shame.
A mountain of waste, almost the height of the Qutub Minar.
When you enter capital cities of some of the biggest countries in the world, you don't have 3 garbage mountains